Hello, and welcome to
Wednesday's Night Out.
with your host, Joseph, Turnpike Plaza 365 Rec Squad.
We will be reading Quotes That Will Change Your Life, a curated collection of mind-blowing wisdom, edited by Russ Kick. Introduction. A quotation at the right moment is like bread to the finish. Talmud. A book that furnishes no quotations is Me, Judas. No book. It is a plaything. Thomas Love Peacock. I'm a quotation junkie. Growing up, surrounded by books, I gravitated to the quote collections on the family bookshelves, including the Doorstoppers, the International Dictionary of Thought, and the Great Quotations, the latter compiled in the 1960s by the great investigative journalist George Sales. When I was at my grandparents' house, I turned to the quotable quotes section of Reader's Digest. Whenever an issue of The Sun is within reach, I head to the last page. Sunbeams, a collection of quotes, usually on that issue's theme. I also like lists, bullet points, fortune cookie fortunes, bumper stickers, Dr. Bronner's soap labels, flashcards, microfiction, trivia books. I prefer short stories to novels, short films to feature films, haiku and quatrains to 5-page poems, Hemingway to Joyce. Maybe that's why I drink spirits, not wine or beer. Distill things for me, boil them down to their essences. Take out the dross, the impurities, the filler. I like wisdom that way too. I probably don't have time for an 800-page treatise on the intricate meaning of life, the universe, and everything. Don't make me wait for that epiphany. Give me your insight in an instant. The best quotes are the ones that crystallize a truth, that offer a new way of seeing things, or that point out something that you've always known, even though the thought has never fully formed in your mind. Suddenly, there it is on the page, in a compact form. Your perspective shifts. This effect has long been noted with regard to books. The great 20th century novelist and essayist James Baldwin said, "You read something which you thought only happened to you, and discover that it happened 100 years ago to Dostoevsky. This is a very great liberation for the suffering, struggling person who always thinks that he is alone. Excellent quotations offer the same thing, the same sense of connection, the same insight into the human condition in a tiny format, much easier to encounter and quicker to absorb than a book. That concision is undoubtedly the biggest selling point of quotes, maxims, aphorisms, and proverbs. Easy to ingest, easy to remember, available to interject into a conversation at a moment's notice. You can sprinkle them throughout your own writing or talks and lectures. Tape them to your bathroom mirror. Use them to sign off your emails. In your SIG line, tweet them. The rise of social media has led to a resurgence in the quoting of quotes. Twitter, with its limit of 140 characters, is a natural habitat for quotations. Facebook doesn't have a hard and fast maximum, but it does reward brevity. Both sites allow posting of small images, and those images are often quotations, usually accompanied by or overlaying a photo. These sites are chock-a-block with quotations from the past 3,000 years. While social networks, JPEGs, and email siglines provide the ideal platform for short bits of text, people's love of quotations goes way back. Lifting one, two, or three sentences, occasionally more, out of a much larger text and pinning it to a new page like a butterfly is a millennia long pursuit. In his book, The Words of Others, From Quotations to Culture, Northwestern University professor Gary Saul Morson reveals that collections of quotations existed in ancient times. They were especially popular in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. The first book printed in Britain was, in fact, a compendium of quotations from the great philosophers. John Bartlett, the 19th century bookseller whose name has become synonymous with quotation collections, was actually taking part in a long tradition. So, what do I look for in quotations? How did I select the ones for flash wisdom? I started with my favorites, the ones that have moved me the most through the years. Helen Schucman on the overriding importance not of seeking love, but of tearing down our internal barriers against it. Audrey Guide's exhortation: believe those who are seeking the truth, doubt those who find it. Thoreau on the true price of anything, the amount of life you exchange for it. Leonard Cohen on acceptance. If you don't become the ocean, you'll be seasick every day. And Chuck Palahniuk on materialism. The things you own end up owning you. Pablo Neruda's 1924 declaration offered to his lover. I want to do with you what spring does with the cherry trees, which I'm told is still being used by Latherists throughout South America. Bruce Lee's stirring remember, in great attempts it is glorious even to fail. Yoko Ono's surprisingly difficult instruction. Try to say nothing negative about anybody for 3 days. For 45 days, for 3 months. See what happens to your life. The harsh medicine offered by a bumper sticker I saw around 20 years ago. The only common denominator in all your fucked up relationships is you. William Blake's support of the road of access and George Eliot's note of hope to those of us who are no longer spring chickens. It is never too late to be what you might have been. From there, I started buying and checking out quotation books by the armful. I dove into the bottomless pit that is Wicca quote. I asked people I know for the quotes that mean the most to them. I found gems that I'd forgotten and discovered loads more than resonated with me. Not that I'm convinced that every quotation I selected is the truth, whatever that is. Many seem to hit the proverbial nail on the head. Others are obvious overstatements, but they contain enough truth to be worth pondering. A handful might even be completely wrong-headed, but they make points that I can't easily dismiss. I banished the twee, the cliche, the cliqued, the cynical, the too clever. You might disagree, of course. One person's treasure is another person's twaddle. I tried to stick with the most eloquent, the punchiest, the most honest, and or the most insightful and revealing. Because of quotations in this book, I've changed my outlook on life, or at least certain aspects of it. I've put new approaches into practice. I look at other people and their actions in different ways. Many of the best quotations are like the best poems. They point to the truth, but they don't spell it out. You get an insight, but it's up to you to figure out what to do with it, how to implement it. Take this quote from Dostoevsky. Much unhappiness has come into the world because of bewilderment and things left unsaid. I hear this as a call to speak important things and to speak them clearly to people who are important to us. But how exactly do we do this? He doesn't tell us. Obviously, we can't say literally everything that's unsaid. None of us would be silent for even a moment. This titan of Russian literature is implying that a few crucial things are going unsaid. What those things are and how and when to say them, will that's up to each of us to decide. A small number of these quotes, however, do offer explicit advice. Sylvia Plath recommends hot baths as a panacea for whatever ails us, physically or emotionally. Hemingway commands us to shut up and truly listen to other people. Napoleon advises us to never make promises. Taking the opposite approach, a tiny portion of these bun mutts are highly abstract. Octavio Paz's meditation on the nature of the romantic couple, the point of intersection of all forces, and the seed of all forms comes to mind, as does J. Krishnamurti's famous defining statement, "Truth is a pathless land." The vast majority of quotes in this book through sprawl over the spectrum between concrete, actionable advice and mystical obliqueness. If a light going on in someone's eyes has ever literally happened, then I saw it happen at a garden party. A community activist was there, a builder of metaphorical bridges, so I relayed a Lincoln quote. Am I not destroying my enemies when I make friends of them? There was a pause. I could see him processing. Then he smiled hugely, his eyes sparkling. Ah, yes. I know that feeling well. Here's hoping it happens at least once to each reader of this book. Russ Kick.
The Dive from Clausen's Pier by Ann Packer. The Dive from Clausen's Pier. Mike always teased me about my memory, about how I could go back years and years to what people were wearing on a given occasion, right down to their jewelry or shoes. He'd laugh and ask what the weather had been, or who'd had a light beer and who a regular one. And I could almost always tell him. That was how I resurrected the past. People in their outfits, or who sat next to whom, and from their own to what we talked about, what we were like at a certain time. Every Memorial Day, we spent the afternoon at Clausen's Reservoir. about 60 miles north of Madison. It was only a mile or so across, but it was ringed by tall old maples, and it was far enough away so that going there seemed like an event. Mike came from Mike came for me at a little afternoon that year, the year everything changed. And once we loaded my stuff into his car and got in onto the interstate, he accelerated to 72. His opinion of the perfect speed if you factored in gas mileage, highway patrol risk, and safety. My mind was on the long untangling I felt was coming our way, and I stared out the window at dairy farm after dairy farm, their big, well-kept barns angled toward the highway. Think it'll be hot? He said after a while, and I didn't look at him. I just shrugged. A little later, he said, I wonder who'll get there first. And this time, I just reached onto the floor for my purse and got out some chapstick. We were in a cold, dark place, and we both knew it. But once I'd done my lips, I handed him the tube, and he did his, and with one hand twisted the bomb back down before he handed it back. We'd been together for 8.5 years. We had all the little familiarities down. It was almost as if we were married, although we weren't, just engaged. The parking lot was only half full, and we found a spot in the shed. From behind my seat, I unloaded a grocery bag of chips and hamburger buns while he opened the latch. He wore long madras shorts and a pine green polo shirt. And as I watched his movements, the quick, effortless way he lifted the beer-laden cooler, I thought about how that easy strength of his had thrilled me once and how it didn't anymore. Hey, I looked up and there were Rooster and Stu striding down the rocky hill that divided the parking lot from the beach. Hey you. Hey you, Mike called back. He cast me a watchful glance and I put on a smile. Coming into the shade, Rooster pulled off his sunglasses and wiped his arm across his forehead. The sun had gotten to him already. His freckled cheeks were pink, his nose a shade or two darker. It's perfect, he said. Warm, a little breeze, and we got the pier no problem. Great, Mike said. He looked over at me, then turned back and said it again. Great. Anything else? Stu asked. Mike reached into the car and tossed him a frisbee. Ah, the all-important frisbee no one would throw. I figured maybe you'd surprise us this year. Mike locked the car, and we headed for the hill. It was dusty already. It had been a dry spring, a, and patches of scruffy grass brushed against my ankles as I climbed. At the top, I paused to look down at Jamie waving from the pier, at the sweep of dazzling blue behind her. I started toward the beach. On the pier, Bill and Christine sat side by side, apparently together again, their hips and thighs touching, Bill's hands resting loosely on Christine's knee. Following Mike across the sand, I wanted nothing more than to sit like that with him until I remembered that was what I didn't want. This mood I was in, I had to remind myself of its rules sometimes. Rooster had already started the fire, and soon Jamie and Christine and I were unwrapping the raw burgers and laying them out on a paper plate. Jamie was right beside me, and in a quiet voice she said, "What's up?" I shrugged, "Nothing." She looked at me carefully. "Really?" After we ate, I took a second beer from the cooler and sat at the end of the pier. The can was icy, almost painful to hold, but I held it anyway, my feet just skimming the water, which I noticed was lower than usual. Wasn't it supposed to come up to my knees? I thought so, but I didn't think so very strongly, and I know I didn't say so. Behind me, Rooster's boombox played one of his compilation tapes, and I could hear everyone talking, the rise and fall of their voices, the little silences before someone thought of something else funny to say. Jamie said, "No Long Island iced teas." And the next thing I knew, Mike was standing over me, casting a shadow onto me and the water. He prodded me once with his big toe and announced, "I'm going swimming." "Mikey," Rooster hooted. I could feel everyone looking at me. Rooster, Stu, Bill, Christine, even Jamie. Looking and thinking, "Come on, Carrie, give the guy a break." I turned and looked at his strong, hairy legs, then up at his face, which was dark against the bright sun. He'd striped this. He striped to his swimming trunks. He'd stripped to his swimming trunks. And as he stood there waiting for me to say something, Rooster came over to stand beside him. "Getting a little spare tire there, buddy," Rooster said, and he cuffed Mike lightly. Mike grinned. "Makes two of us, huh? Maybe we should start a diet club, the Spare Tire Spartans. What do you say?" They all laughed. The Spartans had been our high school mascot. That we were a year out of college and still making Spartans jokes seemed to me to be a symptom of whatever it was we all had, whatever disease it was that had us doing the exact same things we'd always done, and with the exact same people. "I think I'll wait till after the holidays," Rooster said. "The holidays are 6 months away, exactly." Now Mike looked at me. "So what do you think?" he said. "Should I dive?" "Why don't you just jump?" Later, I clung to that as evidence that I tried to stop him, but in fact, I was just being contrary. Dive, Rooster said. Definitely dive. I glanced at Jamie, and she smiled at me. Hey, girl, she said, and she scooted toward me with her hand extended low in front of her, palm side up. I reached over and held my palm on hers for a moment. Mayor, Stu said, you lout? Mike took his baseball cap and held it out for me to take. What about your sunglasses? I said. He dropped the cap onto the pier. They're coming, he said, on a joyride. He looked at Rooster and Stu and Bill with an endearing expression of amusement and challenge on his face, and for an intense moment then, watching him with his friends, I longed to feel again what I no longer felt, that he was just what I wanted. You guys are wimps, he said. I'll think of you when I hit that cool, refreshing water. Everyone laughed again. It was Memorial Day. The water was freezing. Then somewhere on the reservoir, a motorboat started up, and we were still for a moment as we looked across the water to see if we could see it. I remember the sound so clearly, the sound of the boat and also the feel of the icy cold beer can in my hand. I wish I'd done something to stop him then. Jumped up and said I'd marry him that day, or burst into tears, or held on tight to his leg. Anything. But of course I didn't. I was already looking away, when from across the water there came the sound of the outboard revving higher. And then Mike dove. The Dive from Clausen's Pier by Ann Packer. Turnpike Plaza 365 Rec Squad.